Have you ever felt like your thoughts have a life of their own? As if instead of guiding your mind, you are being led by it? This is a silent struggle that happens every day within each of us. Often, without realizing it, we are guided by impulses, emotions, and automatic patterns that originate deep within our mind. Mastering your mind isn't just a nice goal. It's a necessity for anyone seeking clarity, freedom, and inner strength. And to understand this invisible battle, no one offers a better roadmap than Carl Jung. His groundbreaking work shows us that if we don't take control of our mind, it will inevitably control us, shaping our thoughts, decisions, and even our destiny without us even realizing it. In this video, we'll explore what Jung teaches us about the unconscious mind, and most importantly, how we can use this knowledge to achieve self-mastery. We'll understand why we often sabotage ourselves, react impulsively, and feel like we've lost control of our lives. And, most importantly, we'll discover concrete ways to regain control of our lives. Before we dive into this fascinating universe, take the opportunity to check if you are subscribed to the channel. That way, you won't miss any content that can transform the way you see yourself and the world around you. Over the next few minutes, you will realize that mastering your mind is not about fighting it, but about knowing it, understanding it, and making it your most powerful ally. It is a process of self-discovery that requires courage, patience, and above all, a willingness to change. Now that you know what's at stake, let's dig a little deeper. To master the mind, we first need to understand who we're dealing with. And to do that, it's essential to understand the true nature of our mind, especially the part that operates outside of our conscious reach. The true nature of your mind, understanding the unconscious. To master the mind, it is essential to recognize that what we call self is just the tip of a huge iceberg. What is visible, our conscious thoughts, our deliberate choices, represents only a tiny fraction of what is really going on inside us. Most of our mental activity happens outside of our field of vision, in the unconscious. Carl Jung was one of the first psychologists to map this hidden expanse of the human mind. For him, the unconscious was not just a repository of forgotten memories or repressed traumas. It was also the source of creative impulses, emotional patterns and behaviors that often take over without us realizing it. According to Jung, ignoring this invisible force is like trying to drive a car without knowing that there is an engine running behind it. The unconscious mind works in many ways. Sometimes it manifests itself as sudden intuitions. Other times it manifests itself as seemingly irrational emotions, anger, sadness, or fear that arise without logical cause. It is also the unconscious mind that is behind certain repetitive patterns that seem beyond our control. Bad choices we make over and over, difficult relationships that repeat themselves, sabotages that undermine our own efforts. For example, imagine a person who, despite wanting to succeed, procrastinates whenever an important opportunity presents itself. The conscious mind says, "I want to win," but deep down, there are unconscious fears of failure or rejection silently at work. Without the person realizing it, these fears paralyze him or her and shape his or her actions. Another common example is the tendency to overreact to criticism. At first glance, this may seem like a matter of temperament, but often it is the unconscious mind bringing up old feelings of rejection or inadequacy that have been stored up since childhood. These automatic behaviors show how the unconscious is not just a theoretical curiosity, but a real, living force that influences our daily lives. To ignore it is to live at the mercy of impulses we do not understand. Understanding. It is the first step to taking true control. Jung said that we do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making darkness conscious. This means that true mastery of the mind requires us to look within, at what we would rather not see. It is not about eliminating or fighting the unconscious, but about bringing it to light, integrating it into our consciousness so that we can act more freely and consciously. If you sometimes feel like you are in internal conflict, acting against your own interests or letting yourself be carried away by uncontrolled emotions, know that this is absolutely human. But it is also something that can be transformed. The unconscious is like an underground river. We cannot block it, but we can learn to navigate its waters. Understanding how the unconscious mind works is like holding the instruction manual for our own lives in our hands. And it is this knowledge that paves the way for the self-mastery that Jung so emphasized. Now that we understand this invisible force that influences us, we need to take an even bolder step, discovering why we often lose this internal battle before we even realize it. To do this, it is essential to understand one of Carl Jung's most powerful and challenging ideas, the concept of the shadow. Why are you losing the battle? The shadow force. Before continuing, if this content is making sense to you so far, please like the video. This helps the channel reach more people and shows me that you want more content like this. Now let's dive into one of Carl Jung's most profound and most transformative ideas, the concept of the shadow. The shadow represents all the aspects of our personality that we reject, deny, or ignore. These are emotions, desires, impulses, and traits that we consider unacceptable or undesirable, often due to the influence of society, family, or our own internal standards of right and wrong. Instead of disappearing, these parts are pushed into the unconscious, where they continue to act silently. Imagine a child who is taught that he or she can't get angry or shouldn't be selfish. As he or she grows up, he or she learns to suppress these emotions in order to feel accepted. However, these emotions don't go away. They hide, transform, and often manifest themselves in distorted ways. Outbursts of anger for no apparent reason, passive-aggressive behavior, or unconscious sabotage. The shadow is not necessarily something evil. It includes all repressed aspects, including unrecognized talents, legitimate desires, and vital forces that could enrich life if consciously integrated. According to Jung, as long as the shadow remains unconscious, it will continue to control us. And the worst part is that the more we try to deny or ignore it, the stronger it becomes. It is like a hidden weight that silently interferes with our decisions, emotions, and relationships. Have you ever noticed situations where you reacted completely disproportionately to something small, or times when, without understanding why, you self-sabotaged just when you were about to achieve something important? These are typical manifestations of the shadow in action. Another very common example is excessive criticism of others. Often what we most condemn in people is precisely what we do not accept in ourselves. Criticism, in this case, is a projection of our own shadow. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us in others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Recognizing the shadow is uncomfortable. No one likes to admit that they carry feelings of envy, pride, fear, or anger within them. But it is precisely this recognition that opens the door to true self-mastery. Because what remains hidden controls us. What is illuminated we can choose to transform. Understanding that the shadow is part of human nature is a liberating step. It is not about blaming yourself for having impulses or emotions considered negative, but about realizing that these parts are also sources of energy, creativity, and growth if they are properly integrated. Jung teaches us that the goal is not to destroy the shadow, but rather to integrate it. This means bringing these hidden parts into the light of consciousness, recognizing them as part of ourselves, and from there acting more consciously and freely. As long as the shadow remains in the shadows, we will continue to lose the battle against ourselves. But when we look it in the face, with courage and honesty, we begin to regain control of our lives. Now that you understand the powerful and often invisible force at work within you, it's time to take a step forward, learning how to integrate the shadow and finally begin to take back control of your mind. That's what we'll see in the next chapter. Self-mastery. According to Carl Jung, integrating the shadow. Now that we understand what the shadow is and how it can silently control us, it is time to address the path proposed by Carl Jung to regain control of the mind. Shadow integration. Integrating the shadow is not about ignoring it or waging war against it. It is about recognizing it as part of our nature and establishing a conscious relationship with these previously hidden aspects. As Jung said, the integration of the shadow is an extraordinary moral task that demands all the strength of character available. This journey requires courage, but the fruits it offers, inner freedom, emotional clarity, authenticity, are unparalleled. Next, we will detail the 3 essential steps to begin this integration process. 1. Self-observation without judgment. The first step is to develop the ability to observe your own thoughts, emotions, and impulses without criticism or rejection. Often, when we feel anger, envy, or fear, our automatic tendency is to repress, deny, or blame ourselves. This only reinforces the unconscious cycle. The practice of self-observation consists of witnessing these emotions with a neutral attitude. I'm feeling angry right now. I envy that person. I'm afraid of failing. Without blaming yourself, without trying to justify or hide, just acknowledging the existence of the feeling. This simple change in attitude already reduces the power of the shadow because it feeds on what is repressed, not on what is accepted. 2. Active acceptance of uncomfortable feelings. Acknowledging is just the beginning. The next step is to practice active acceptance. Acceptance is not about agreeing with or giving in to the impulse, but about acknowledging that it is part of your human experience. For example, when you notice a feeling of envy, it is not a matter of acting on it or trying to deny it, but of accepting its existence and seeking to understand where it comes from. Ask yourself, what is this envy trying to show me about my own unfulfilled desires? This gentle inquiry transforms the feeling into valuable information about who you are and what needs to be developed within you. 3. Conscious internal dialogue. The third step is to create an internal dialogue with these aspects of your personality. This practice can be done through journaling, reflective writing, meditation, or silent reflection. Ask yourself, where does this fear I felt today come from? What is my irritation trying to warn me about? What part of me is still acting as an automatic reflex? This internal dialogue creates a bridge between the conscious and unconscious mind, allowing you to recognize hidden patterns, understand their origins, and choose responses that are more aligned with your values and goals. The importance of acting consciously. Integrating the shadow does not mean acting on every impulse that arises, but rather acting consciously, recognizing these impulses, and deciding how to respond in an adult, wise, and free way. Over time, this practice builds genuine self-mastery. You stop being held hostage by your automatic emotions and become the architect of your own conduct. Carl Jung believed that the greatest freedom of human beings lies in the ability to make the unconscious conscious and thus take responsibility for one's own life. By integrating the shadow, you not only gain clarity about yourself, but you also become more empathetic, stronger, and more complete. You begin to act from the totality of your being, not just the small fraction that the ego can see. This is the key to real and lasting mental mastery, recognizing, accepting, and integrating all that you are. Now that you know the steps to integrate your shadow, the next step is to bring all of this into your daily life in a practical and accessible way. Let's see how to apply Jung's strategy in real-life situations. Applying Jungian strategy in daily life. Before we move on, I want to hear from you. Which part of shadow integration has caught your attention the most so far? Leave a comment, because your opinion is very important and can help other people who are watching too. Now, let's put theory into practice. Integrating the shadow and mastering the mind are not processes that only happen at special moments or during big decisions. They are revealed in everyday life, in small choices, in seemingly insignificant reactions. It is precisely in our routine that we can transform our relationship with the unconscious mind and, little by little, take control. Next, we will see how to apply Jung's strategy in practical situations that you have probably already experienced or will experience soon. 1. Consciously reacting to criticism. Receiving criticism is never comfortable. Our automatic reaction may be anger, denial, or deep sadness. However, applying shadow integration in this moment means observing the emotion before acting. When someone criticizes you before responding impulsively, pause internally and ask, why did this affect me so much? Is there something true that I'm trying to deny? Even if the criticism is unfair, the intense emotional reaction can be an invitation to explore insecurities that still live in your subconscious. Responding consciously, whether assertively or calmly, is a small victory in the process of self-control. 2. Coping with everyday anxiety. Anxiety is a classic manifestation of the unconscious mind, trying to anticipate the future and protect you from potential threats. Rather than fighting anxiety or blaming yourself for feeling it, Jung would teach us to listen to this emotion. In practice, this means acknowledging the discomfort, taking a deep breath and asking, What is my anxiety trying to warn me about? Perhaps it is pointing to the need to better prepare for a challenge, or perhaps it is simply reacting to old fears that do not correspond to the current reality. This attitude of curiosity diminishes the power of anxiety and increases your mental clarity to take action. 3. Avoiding impulsive behaviors. Impulses such as overspending, overeating, or procrastinating on important decisions often come from unresolved unconscious desires. When you feel a strong urge, practice self-observation. Stop for a few seconds. Feel the emotion or desire without acting immediately. Ask yourself, is this impulse taking me closer or further away from the person I want to be? This simple exercise strengthens your awareness muscle and helps to weaken the dominance of the unconscious mind, making self-mastery a habit. Just as strengthening the body requires regular training, strengthening the mind requires daily practice. Each small act of awareness in your daily life is like a brick in the construction of a new identity, the identity of someone who acts with freedom and intention, not reflex or fear. Jung said that the work of self-knowledge is a lifelong journey. There is no end point where everything will be ready, but there is continuous evolution for those who dedicate themselves to walking. As you apply shadow integration to everyday situations, you will begin to notice profound changes, more balanced reactions, less unnecessary suffering, greater ability to choose your paths instead of being carried away by impulses. These silent victories build, brick by brick, the foundation of a more authentic, stronger, and freer life. However, the journey to self-mastery also presents subtle obstacles and traps that can sabotage your progress if you're not careful. It's these traps, and how to avoid them, that we'll discuss in the next chapter. Pitfalls on the path to self-mastery. When you begin your journey to master your mind, it's common to encounter pitfalls that, if left unrecognized, can slow or even impede your progress. These pitfalls are subtle because they often disguise themselves as good intentions or manifest as automatic behaviors that are already deeply ingrained. Now let's identify these pitfalls and learn how to avoid them so that your self-mastery journey is more consistent and powerful. 1. Repress instead of integrate. One of the most common pitfalls is confusing self-control with repression. Repressing uncomfortable thoughts and emotions may give you a sense of control in the short term, but in the long run, it only increases the power of the shadow. When you simply push a feeling away, pretending it doesn't exist, you're actually feeding it into your unconscious. The key is to remember, integration is about accepting and understanding, not pretending you don't feel it. When you feel angry, sad, or jealous, don't blame yourself or try to block these emotions. Recognize them as part of the human experience and explore what they are trying to reveal about you. 2. Seek immediate results. Another common mistake is to expect inner transformation to happen quickly. Mastering the mind is a continuous and gradual process. Sometimes, even after weeks or months of practice, old patterns will still emerge. It is essential to be patient and understand that every little step forward counts. Every time you observe an emotion without fully identifying with it, every time you choose to act consciously instead of impulsively, you are strengthening your new identity. A lack of quick results can lead to frustration and abandonment of the process. Therefore, celebrate small victories and be clear that true transformation happens gradually. 3. Deny the existence of the shadow. Many people, when confronted with uncomfortable aspects of themselves, choose denial. I'm not like that. I would never feel that way. This refusal to look inward blocks growth. The courage to admit the existence of impulses and emotions that do not fit our self-image is what separates those who truly evolve from those who remain stuck in repetitive cycles. Remember, acceptance does not mean identifying with or surrendering to these aspects, but recognizing them as part of the wholeness that is you. Overcoming these pitfalls. The key to overcoming these pitfalls is to maintain a constant attitude of self-observation, acceptance, and compassion. Be patient with yourself. Remember that the goal is not to be perfect, but to be more aware each day. By learning to identify and deal with these difficulties, you further strengthen your ability to master your mind in a mature and true way. Now that you know both the tools and the obstacles in your path, It's time to look to the horizon and visualize what's really at stake, the transformative power that mental self-mastery can bring to your life. That's what we'll talk about in the next chapter, the transformative power of mental self-mastery. If this video is making sense to you, take the opportunity to leave your like. This helps the channel grow and motivates me to bring even more in-depth content like this. Now let's talk about something essential. What really changes when you master your mind? Many people begin the journey of self-knowledge motivated by pain, the pain of feeling out of control, of being dominated by emotions, impulses, or automatic patterns. But what few realize is that when you achieve self-mastery, what opens up before you is much greater than just the absence of suffering. Mental self-mastery brings profound transformation in several areas of life. 1. Emotional clarity. When you integrate the shadow and learn to observe your emotions without being controlled by them, an inner clarity emerges that previously seemed unattainable. You begin to understand not only what you feel, but also why you feel it. This allows for more conscious and mature choices, both in relationships and in personal and professional decisions. You stop reacting automatically and start acting from a place of understanding and purpose. 2. Freedom of choice. Self-mastery gives you back the power to choose how you react to situations. Instead of being driven by anxiety, anger, or fear, you create the inner space to assess the circumstances and respond in a way that aligns with your values. This freedom of choice is true freedom, not depending on external circumstances to maintain your inner peace. 3. Healthier relationships. Many of the difficulties in relationships come from unconscious projections. We judge others for what we deny in ourselves. When you integrate your shadow, this dynamic begins to change. You become more empathetic, more understanding, more able to see the other person as they are, and not just as a mirror of your own unresolved pain. Relationships become more authentic, lighter, and more truthful. 4. Internal strengthening. Each time you choose to act consciously instead of being dominated by old impulses, you strengthen your true self-esteem, the one that does not depend on external approval, but arises from the full awareness of who you are. This internal strengthening generates a feeling of personal power, emotional resilience, and real confidence in one's own ability to lead one's life. Mental self-mastery, therefore, is not just a technique for emotional control. It is a process of reconnecting with your deepest essence. It is becoming, day after day, the best and most complete version of yourself. And it all starts with taking the first step, choosing awareness over knee-jerk reaction. Your journey starts now. If all this content made sense to you, and you want to continue on this journey of self-knowledge and mental strengthening, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any videos that can make all the difference in your personal development. Now, let's wrap up by connecting everything we've seen so far. Mastering the mind is not just an intellectual challenge, it is an act of courage. It is the courage to look within yourself, face the parts of yourself that have been rejected or forgotten, and choose every day to act from a place of awareness and truth. We learned from Carl Jung that the unconscious mind, if not brought to light, will continue to direct our lives, and we, blind, will call it fate. But we also learned that we have the power to change this story. We have the power to observe, accept, and integrate all of who we are, transforming weaknesses into strengths and fears into freedom. Every time you choose to observe instead of react, to accept instead of suppress, to act consciously instead of being carried away by impulse, you are shaping a new reality for yourself. A reality where you are the author of your own story, and not just a character being carried along by the invisible script of the unconscious mind. Remember, true freedom begins within you, and the process of self-mastery is continuous, but each step is already a victory. From now on, every thought you observe, every emotion you embrace, every decision you make consciously is an affirmation of your personal power. The journey is not easy, but it is the only one that leads to what is greatest, living truly with authenticity, courage, and purpose. So the final question that remains is, will you let your mind control you, or will you, from today onwards, take control of your own life? The choice is yours, and your transformation begins now.